Welcome to Practical Business Technology, where we keep you in the know about technology's impact on business. Today's show is sponsored by the Maricopa County Bar Association, and our host is Dave Kinsey, author and owner of Total Networks. Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Dave.
And today we're talking about working remote and specifically video meetings. So many of us are working from home, especially now due to the coronavirus. And you saw a lot of use in Zoom in the beginning. It's been a pretty good free resource. There are paid versions, but you can do a lot with Zoom for free.
Yeah, it's a freemium product, F-R-E-E, freemium product where it's it has a base version that's free, and then you can pay more for ones with more features.
So the base version has a 40-minute time limit. So that's probably the most notable thing that I'm aware of.
Yep.
And I also had heard about some security issues that probably a lot of that's been corrected.
You and a lot of people have heard about the security issues. Been all over the news. Yeah, they around the beginning of April, Zoom actually published an update saying we are not going to be adding any features at all for the next 3 months. The only thing we are working on is security. The only thing, and so because there had been a number of concerns. One of there's some things that are settings. There's some actual bugs. There's Zoom themselves admitted that they accidentally were routing some of their Zoom meetings through China. They said they ran out of capacity, and they turned on some resources in China. And there's some obvious privacy issues when you're routing things through China, where there's just invasive government that can generally see everything.
Well, and there were issues where they were calling it Zoom bombing.
Yep, and that's more. A lot of that's really more of a settings thing. And they actually published an article saying, so what was the title? I think it was "How to Keep Uninvited Guests Out of Your Zoom Meeting" or something like that.
Okay, so but wasn't that when they started adding? You used to need a password.
Oh, well, I think a lot of these features existed, but people didn't know how to use them, and so they were educating people. So, to be clear, there is no such thing as the perfectly secure application. It doesn't exist by anybody, because it's made by, this is software made by people. That said, Zoom, I think, arguably had a lot more focus on features than they did security. And now they sort of flipped that around, at least in the short term. So the Zoom bombing, they've had, people that would just, show up in your Zoom meeting and take control of the screen or do all sorts of stuff. And, you can manage that if you set your security appropriately.
So businesses... Yeah, you hear about schools using Zoom or just friends using Zoom to call their friends. A lot of businesses are using Microsoft Teams.
Correct.
And our business has used Microsoft Teams, and I personally find that I like it very well. I like it a lot. It works really well for us.
It's Microsoft's fastest growing product. It's, in terms of usage.
So when you're working from home, which so many of us are these days, and even before the pandemic, there are businesses that have remote workers.
Yep.
One of the advantages of Microsoft Teams is it integrates with, so if you have Office 365,
you have Teams.
You have Teams. So if
Yes.
you didn't know that, if you have Office 365, you have Teams. It just needs to be set up for you. And
it's one of the most powerful, neat features that are built within Office 365. Office 365, when it originally came out, it was just kind of a name for hosted Exchange, and then you'd also have your actual Microsoft Office applications. But it has evolved over time, And Microsoft Teams is a real example of that, of how they've really extended the functionality. It's very powerful.
So maybe let's just talk about how does a meeting work in Microsoft Teams.
One of the ways you can do ad hoc meetings where you invite people real time on the fly, but probably a more common usage would be where you'd schedule a meeting, right? Everyone's gone onto their calendar, right, in Outlook and scheduled the meeting. Well, if you have Teams installed or enabled, you'll have a button on there to say make it a Teams meeting, and so right there within Outlook, you can schedule within Outlook or within Teams.
That's one nice feature. If you're in Teams already, you just go to the calendar and you can schedule a meeting, or you can just call someone right there. If you're in Outlook, you can schedule a meeting and then just click the button to make it a Teams meeting. And then when you're in Teams, you look at your calendar. If it's time for the meeting, there's a big purple join button.
Yep.
And it is so simple. You just click on the join and boom, you're there.
Yeah, and if you're a participant and somebody starts the meeting and you have Teams open, it'll say, hey, so-and-so just joined the meeting. And you're like, oh, okay, well, everyone's gathering and I can see who's in there, and I joined the meeting.
My experience is that we have people come to meetings on time now.
Yeah, not only do you get the reminder, you get a reminder saying, hey, this person's already in the meeting, and you're like, oh, yeah, I better be there.
You're just at your computer, so you click join.
Yeah, me too.
Whereas if it was going into the conference room, it's more, I think, a habit of some people to, let me finish this one thing I'm working on before I come down to the conference room. So I have found it to be a little more efficient where meetings are starting on time, they're ending on time. And compared to my experience with Teams versus Zoom, I'm able to load into the Teams meeting very, very fast. Zoom for me has taken a little bit longer to connect, and I don't know if that's just
you have Teams open.
Yeah, so maybe that's why.
If you have Teams open, it's boom. Yeah.
And then when you are in the meeting, there are ways that you can go to other channels in Teams to pull up files. You can do screen sharing. You can record.
Yep.
You can show your video or hide your video. You can do backgrounds to your video. So you can have, one of our employees has the Starship Enterprise as his background. It looks like he's on the ship. And
I don't know about that. I've seen like the Death Star, and I've seen like Battlestar Galactica. I don't know
so maybe I've got my sci-fi.
I think you may have your sci-fi wrong. I don't know. I don't know if I've actually seen anyone on the Enterprise, but that's not to say that they haven't been.
Okay. And then the recording's a nice feature if you are we've done that with training.
Yes.
So if you're doing a training session for people, it's nice to be able to hit the record button. So
yeah, that's one thing I will say about Teams in general. The idea is Teams is persistent. It's very much it's really where Microsoft is trying to take everything, and it makes a lot of sense. When you look at email's persistent, right? But email's not persistent in the fact that if you have somebody that's joining to the conversation late, or whatever, maybe they have a thread that they see if they're copied on it, but if they're invited to this discussion later, it may be a whole separate thread. Whereas you add somebody to a team, they can go and look at all the history associated with that team. They could look at chats. They could look at recordings of meetings if it was associated with that channel. They can see documents, and so so that's a very useful feature.
So we did talk a little bit about security with Zoom. What about security with Microsoft Teams?
Nothing is perfect. So I don't want to say if you're in Teams that it will be perfect. However, Microsoft does have a good track record of of working to try to manage privacy and all that. And is it more secure? I think it is, but it's certainly a lot more feature rich. Yeah.
Well, and I think that Microsoft designed their tools with security in mind.
They did.
Whereas Zoom maybe didn't start out with
They're
that.
catching up.
And so it's a different...
Yeah, I'll say one of the nice things about Zoom versus Teams, one of the things with Zoom is in their free version, you click on the Zoom meeting, you'll join, and you'll have a choice of either joining via your computer audio or via phone, and that's included even in the free version. Now, with Teams, that is not. With Teams, in the free version, or even in just the base version that's included with an Office 365, you can only join via your computer. Now, it's very inexpensive to add the the subscription to be able to have a phone number to dial in on. And so for us, for our company, I have that capability, and a few other people that regularly schedule meetings with outside parties do that, so that it can be to a participant. It can be basically an audio conference only for them, if that's their experience they want, or they can be video and dial in from their phone to do the audio, or it can be all on the computer and has that flexibility. So once again, that's a very inexpensive add-on, but it's not free.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because if you don't have a webcam or a computer microphone, you would need to call in by phone.
Correct.
And
if you don't have speakers or you don't have a microphone, if you're missing either aspect of that. Now, like
the dial-in version.
Yeah, so if you add a webcam to the computer, you add both. Typically, or because you'll add the video and the microphone and all that.
And for Teams, it works super slick if you're just within your internal company.
Yeah.
But you can do video meetings with outside, and you do also have the ability to make it where you have to allow the person in.
Yep.
So that there's some security around that. They can't just barge in or with unannounced, or have somebody listening that isn't supposed to. So.
Yeah.
What about screen sharing?
Yeah, well, if you talk Zoom, one of the things that Zoom talks about is very much so from a privacy standpoint, don't allow anyone to share your screen except for you. So if you're in the Zoom world, make sure you do that, because you want to be in control if you're scheduling this meeting. Now, if it's an internal meeting and you've done the permissions right and so, it may not be such a big deal, but that's where you've had this Zoom bombing where people will come in and take control of your screen. With Teams, that you do have the ability to share your screen, and you don't really have the same issue as you do with Zoom there, where people take control of it. You share your own
screen. It's a real simple button you click on. You pick what screen you want to share.
And you can control who can share the screen or not.
Okay. So one of the things that I have appreciated working from home so much due to the pandemic is still being able to stay connected.
Mm-hmm.
You could just pick up a phone and have a phone call with people, but having that visual, seeing their face, has been nice.
Yeah, I think when you look at Teams, the immediacy of Teams is apparent from the fact that it's a chat tool. Some people will look at it as chat, but it's chat and it's video and all that. So both of those have an immediacy to them, because when you're chatting, it's a real time. It may not be a real time experience. Some people may join in the chat later, but it can be a real time experience. And then the video, definitely, there's a big difference. I think just being able to see that face. There's something about it. It's still not, it's maybe not quite the same thing as being there, but I don't know. I'm coming around to where I'm really questioning just how many meetings I may have a Teams meeting, where I'm finding right now here in the Valley, in Phoenix, where I might go to visit people, because we still do some of that. I'm doing that via Teams almost exclusively now, because I don't want to be there. What if I don't need to be there?
Well, and it saves travel time.
Yeah, and it saves travel time. Yeah. So I've done it for both reasons, actually. Yeah.
And then because it's all integrated with Microsoft, you can pull up a Word document and collaborate real time if you want to edit something.
Yeah, that's one of the real powerful things I think about Teams. I mean, really, it's a SharePoint Online thing within Microsoft where you can do this co-authoring. And so you don't have to be using Teams. And in some respects, some places may make sense to just have in SharePoint. But boy, it's really convenient if you have a team and you're like, these people are working on this stuff. And it might be an outside party. So, and which is why I found it very, very powerful. Found it a very powerful way to sort of collaborate with a party, to have that chat, to have documents, to be able to, schedule the video, whatnot. But it's very cool though, to do that.
All right. Well, what else?
Well, I mean, I think we'll find out what Microsoft is putting a ton of resources into Teams. So I don't know all the new features that will be there, but I do know that they're continuing to develop it, and it already is a pretty amazing tool. When they created it, I think they had their sights set on being a alternative to Slack, which is a very popular application, and I already think they've surpassed them in terms of what it can do.
Slack integrates with a lot of different apps.
It does.
And we did use Slack
for
our business for a while, but if you are using Microsoft, so if you're using Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Outlook, then just to have that collaboration chat functionality baked in where it integrates, it just seems to be a natural fit. I think Microsoft is adding more apps that it integrates with to compete with the Slack function. And at least when we use Slack, I don't recall doing much with video, but it maybe had it. I can just say, we've been on Teams for so long now. Really, it's kind of become the default way we get a lot of work done. I mean, basically, it's how we keep everybody on the same page, so everybody is far flung. They'll have the Teams on their PC. They'll have the Teams on their phone. It's very useful to be able to it's very effective. Yeah, it is. I mean, we still email each other, but when there's things that you need to get a large group of people's attention on, it's a great way to do that without cluttering up your email.
Yeah. Now I find, will occasionally within the company send an email. I'll use that for something very detailed, because email is, I think, I could create a really very, very long and lengthy Teams post, but it's just kind of not in the spirit of Teams, right? Because Teams is built, those messages are really, they're chat.
Yeah,
it's really what it is.
Texting.
So you wouldn't create a lengthy, detailed, text message, and it's kind of the same thing with Microsoft Teams. So I've actually find when I say if I'm going to send an announcement to the entire company, which I just did just the other day, I typed up an email, emailed it out, and then went into Teams and said, "Hey, I just sent this email out. Please look at it." So because it's become so that much more where people are really looking at their Teams. Sometimes it can be at the expense of email because of that. So and I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. Teams is more efficient.
All right. Anything else we want to add? Closing remarks about working from home and video and collaboration tools?
No, I think other than hopefully everyone stays safe out there in this COVID-19 world. I know right now we're when we're recording this, we're sort of quote unquote opening things back up and going back to the office more in a cautious mode. A lot of people think that one of the things about this whole pandemic is that it's really encouraged people to use more of these collaborative tools because by forcing them, because they have to be physically distant. And there's some people that, I think that part of it may actually be a good thing, because to really encouraging some of that way improve some of the efficiency. So we'll see where this all goes.
Yeah, so long as you make sure you keep all your security up to snuff, and just like we want to be washing our hands for good personal hygiene, we want to keep those viruses, viruses away as well.
Yeah, we keep away from the computer viruses and the physical ones, right? Yeah.
But you're right. I think that we will see more people choosing to work from home or work in different ways because they've been kind of forced into learning all of these things and realizing, wow, these are some great tools I should have been using all along. Traveling
less. I can tell you one thing. I've listened to a bunch of people talk about what's happening to, say, the airline industry. I mean, decimated. It's hard to know what's going to happen with it. The travel is down something like 80%. It's very, very small. A lot of people think that there's going to be, even after all this, some lesser traffic, not just for people scared about the infections, but just because they're now finding that using tools like Teams or Zoom, can help, and so they may not need that as much. We'll see. There's still no ultimate substitute for that face-to-face, right? But these tools get us a large part of the way there.
Yeah, they do. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Good talking today.
Yep.
Stay safe, everybody.
Yep. Thanks.